Welcome to the next episode of our Focusing Pathways podcast. In this episode, Therese speaks to Mary Jennings. Mary is a coordinator and focusing trainer with the International Focusing Institute. She has been involved with focusing for nearly 30 years. Mary has integrated focusing into many different aspects of her life, from business, where she used it to help facilitate groups in search of the edge of something new, to introducing focusing with children to Ireland and being in touch with her own felt sense, which guides her through her own personal life. Mary is also a facilitator of the Institute's Roundtable series aimed at encouraging conversation and connection. She's currently working with others on a focusing project in Gaza, developing tailored programs specific to the very difficult situation on the ground. This program is stalled at the moment, but she remains hopeful that this work will continue into the not so distant future to support the people of Gaza. Here is Mary's story.
You're very welcome, Mary. And I'd like to start off by asking you, how did focusing find you?
Okay. Hi, Therese. Good to talk to you. Well, I think I was just trying to think back. I think it was 1994 or 1995, that kind of time. And I was working in a kind of an NGO, and this leaflet came in one day about a retreat place up in Wicklow. It's now closed, and a few of us said, "Oh, it'd be nice to do something, go together," because we were all kind of new. So off we went anyway, and there was this thing called focusing, get to know yourself, or I can't even remember how it was, advertised. So we went along anyway, and sure, here were two people from, I think, Canada, who came regularly to this retreat centre and introduced us to this listening to oneself. And I can still remember it very vividly where we did clearing a space. And I was going, but sure, if I put out everything that I'm concerned about or worried about, or sure, what will be left? I remember that so distinctly. And when I did that, clearing a space, and there was this lovely inside kind of nothingness in a good way, that was so lovely. And it was about staying there and resting there. And so I just knew there was something here that was useful, helpful. So I was determined then to follow up, and I encountered Sister Kathleen Kavanagh, who's now in her 90s, and the mother of focusing, as we call her here, and did some classes with her. And then, they had the levels 1, 2, 3, 4. So she was saying, "Oh, go on and do all the." And I really did the levels, not to be a teacher or anything, because I wanted to know more. And practice in, have a focusing partnership and all of that. So that's really how I started. Yeah, that's how it came about. But I was working full time in in business, and also worked with an NGO, and then I left that and set up my own business. So that's how it began, really.
I love that you started your memory of that clearing a space and that nothingness, the
Yes.
fear of it and the surprise of the loveliness of it.
Totally. And I still can remember it, very well. And it's interesting that over the years, I began not to do clearing a space just because I suppose you got into the habit of just being in touch with something, what was there, and then saying, "Oh, what does it need?" and how to move forward, all of that. So clearing a space came back into my life just very recently. I attended one of the conferences, I think it was Felt Sense Conferencing, and there was a piece on clearing a space, which was straight out of the Jennings focusing book. And I just went, golly, there's more to it than even I had remembered. There's different kinds, ways of doing it. That led me back actually to reading Jennings' focusing book. And it was so fresh to read that again. However many years later, I can't even do nearly 25, is it? 35? 95 to whatever.
Almost 30. Wow.
Yeah. And I just realized reading that book that even all the exercises we do in teaching people, in the way we approach it, it's all there in that book.
And Mary, what was it when you came back to clearing a space recently? What was it that was more? You said there was much more in it. Do you
Yeah, I
remember
think,
what it was?
yes, I do remember that it was more about, let me see, how will I put this? It was a bit like one is just a kind of a tidy up, or a sort of get your to-do list, like a housekeeping. And so putting things aside and then picking it up. And that's just a sort of a nice thing to do, or a useful thing to do. And then there's a second level of, putting things down, and that almost in itself is enough. That somehow they've changed already. And I think the third one was that it's a bit like, and I think that's what I got the first time. It's almost like there's a sense of moreness, of that sense, I am more than any of these things that I'm carrying around. And there's almost like, and I use these words very advisedly, like almost a spiritual sense, but don't ask me to explain that. But something, a connection that feels, and I think Jennings talks about this, and all okayness underneath all our stuff. So I think I thought those kind of three ways more clearly.
Yeah, that really makes sense. And it's interesting, isn't it? The nothingness that you used at the beginning, and then the more.
Yeah. And the moreness of nothing. Oh God, that's a real Jennings sort of unpack that now.
Yeah, the moreness of nothing. And there's a couple of things I want to ask you. So I want to go back first. I want to come to Jenlyn and reading the focusing book freshly. So maybe we'll talk about that first, and then go back to after you had learned the different levels of focusing. So when you came back to read freshly this book, Focusing, what was that like?
Well, it was that sense of, when you're when people give examples of what focusing is about, or when people talk about how to do the steps or the exercises or reflective listening, it's all in, he does that really well in that book. And it's like those things still hold true and are perennial. You don't need to reinvent ways of doing it or something, or teaching it or talking about it. I think he has laid it out really beautifully there. And I think he's part of his genius is that thing of being able to distill, a lot of philosophical thinking and a lot of scholarship around psychology into, actually, this is how we are as human beings. So let's just lay that out and talk about it. I think he does that really simply, and not simplistically, but simply.
Yeah, it's like bringing the universal, isn't it, into that.
Yeah, or it's like, I suppose this brings me to something else about, it's like, I know we spend a lot of time, or there's a lot of effort putting into teaching, focusing, like it's a thing you have to learn dutifully by going through, levels and courses. And I don't think anybody has cracked this, and I certainly haven't. But there's something for me about how, if we said some focusing is already there, and let us help you discover it more intentionally. And I think that's a very different way of approaching how you talk about it, how you teach it. So yeah, I haven't got that one, but there's something there about that. I think would be a better way when people say, why isn't focusing better known? Because I think it's hard to explain, but people know it.
So it's like coming from that starting point of presumption that it's all here and all we need to do is bring it out rather than put something in.
Yeah, like people how to help people discover it and notice it. And I think, certainly Margaret Quinn and myself have been teaching non-focusing, like mindful communications or decisions, to people who are coming for a purpose of learning more about communications or learning about decisions, but it's focusing orientated. So we introduce them to the things that they already know from their experience, and then you say, and we name that. So there is a way of doing it. I think that kind of maybe less. I just think of the word now, less onerous. But there you go.
Yeah. And Mary, in that same vein, when you talk about starting with people's experience, when you learned focusing way back and learned the different levels and you were working full time at that stage, did you find it yourself using it in your own life, and how so, and what impact did it have?
Well, I think there are two things. One is, I think, how I use it personally. Maybe if I had some difficulty or was trying to sort out something, what was going on, I would use it in that way. And maybe with the focusing partner saying, gee, I'd love to talk about X, Y, and Z, and find a way forward with it in a norm. And like, I think that's where focusing probably started and where it's strongest now. But for me, it was also because I worked in kind of marketing and branding area, and I was facilitating a lot of groups who were trying to find something new, find something that they wanted to say, change the name of a company, find out what were the key things that were most important. So I began to just pay attention to people in a focusing on their focusing way. When people were unclear, I would stop and pause and give them time and protect them at a meeting, protect their space. Because I think certainly in the business world I've grown up in or was trained in, it's like getting to the solution fast as you can, using a lot of models that kind of get you there, that are pre-given outcomes, and they can be really useful. But there's also another way that actually, I think, if it were introduced, would be really helpful. So I call it spot the focuser, spotting focusing that's going on, and saying, okay, Mary, I'll come back to you. Something there about, that's not, okay. And then you get a richness when you allow that. So I used it all the time in that way. Or I used more elements of thinking at the edge, the kind of questions that are there. Like, so what would you really like that to mean now? Well, in this context, what does edgy mean? Or what does lovely mean? Ordinary words. And allow people time to say, edgy. Oh, what does that mean? It means, I remember this example. Somebody wanted to do a newsletter. She said, I want to be edgy. Something that people wouldn't have thought of already, or something that would kind of challenge their comfort zone. Oh, I said, that kind of edgy. Okay, I get it now. Whereas before I might have said, oh yeah, edgy, yeah. Okay, here's 3 edgy things. I get it. Which would be my sense of the thing. Whereas she had it, now that we've unpacked her sense of it, and she was the client, now we can work together on her sense of edginess. That's how I would use it. And
I love that way of bringing it into the everyday, into your work and into your life without even having to name it.
Without having to name it, no, because it's going on. Now, I suppose, in a way, the kind of places I'm talking about, or the kind of situation I'm talking about, is people were naturally inwardly looking anyway, because they had a problem to solve, so therefore it was totally appropriate, that you're saying, oh yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be there if everybody knew what they were about. You wouldn't be need for a meeting, so it fitted that context very well.
Yeah.
But I brought a lot of those kind of things in. And then people used to say, are you doing that mindfully kind of thing? I'd say I am, yeah.
So they knew there was something different going on.
They knew there was something different going on.
And they were responding to it, obviously.
And they were responding to it, or noticing that, it worked, in the sense of people were able to say things more clearly, that they had time to kind of felt sense.
Okay. And Mary, what else has been important in your focusing journey? I know you've taught focusing a lot, and I know you've worked in different areas to do with focusing. So what's been really rich and important?
I think all of what I've described has been for me really a richness, in my working life, and in my private life, yeah, if you like, or my being, I suppose, in the sense of oh, there is a way forward, or there's something here to pay attention to, that life wants to live forward. That for me is really an important thing. So even when things seem very difficult, you think, oh, why is that coming now? Oh, that's interesting. That needs attention. All right. I'm not sure it's the only thing that you need in your life, or either, but I think that richness of that sense of life wants to live forward, for me is a very exciting thing to know, and to have, and to understand.
And the hopefulness of it.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing I've been involved in is sort of kind of a bit of an organizer, or sort, and like, even though I've been self-employed, I'm actually, any of the personality traits, or what you go that, I'm a kind of an organization person, really. So I like sort of, some if ideas come about, let's do this, let's do that. I mean, for me, a really exciting thing years ago now, and it was bringing children focusing to Ireland. And I can also remember that vividly, when I decided, I made a decision. Renee Voglers was here with Nico Verschoors, I think he's saying, how you say it right. He kill me if he watches this and I haven't got his name. But anyway, they were over as a fundraiser for Gaza. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And the same night, the same time they were here, the Ryan report was published, which was absolutely damning. Kind of indictment of the way children were treated. And it was so shocking. And it was a bit like, one more thing. And I remember saying, actually, instead of being angry, maybe this is something we need about, that Renee had showed us. This is how children can be listened to and valued and understood. And it was like a little epiphany. And they were actually staying with me in my house. And I just said there and then, and we're doing this. And I remember back thinking it was a really energizing time, I was lucky to be able to do some of it, in that I was working, self-employed. So wasn't to a timetable necessarily, although you work really the same hours as everybody else, but you've more flexibility. So the precursor to the IF, to the Irish Focusing Network, which was the focusing professionals, and they had actually quite a lot of, well, relatively speaking, quite a lot of money that they had gathered from running, courses and conferences. This is back in the time pre-Celtic Tiger times, when people had money. And I asked for some funds to kickstart it, and they very kindly gave me some money, and that allowed me to find a venue, pay Renee, subsidize people, buy some of the books, and do a 60-hour course. And some of the people it was the first time I ever met Margaret Quinn, there was Tom Larkin, there was Caroline Moore, Derek MacDonald, Phil Kelly, Maggie Neary, Kay McKinney, a few more people like that. Were and some, it was interesting. Some came because they were grannies, wanted to listen to their children. Some were working with children, and that's who we were kind of trying to target. Some were teachers. So it started off that. So it was a lot of work over a kind of a year, 18 months maybe. And I realized then it takes an awful long time to bed something in. Some people got interested in focusing with children after that. But I suppose for me, I had this great idea that I was going to change the whole world. But I realized you'd have to spend your whole life doing that. But that was really an exciting.
I didn't know, and I love that the germination of that was the Ryan report, totally. Where children, as you say, were absolutely not listened to, and how that wonderful conference came out of that. So that's just amazing.
And we had we did all sorts of things. Like we had the training, we had a children's conference. I think there were 20 people training. There was then the children's conference. It is actually nearly 10. In 2014, it'd be 10 years ago.
And you mentioned Gaza as well. Can you say a little bit more about your work?
And again, when I think about that, that those things come together. Now, I'm not a great one for thinking about, the universe has shown us, the universe points you in the right direction or something like that. But actually, when I think about that, it was a bit like, what are the chances that somebody who was staying in my house, who only came over for one weekend to do a fundraiser, was there, and I just said, right, you're the person, let's do it. So maybe some things do come together. Same thing with Gaza is like, there was a guy called Herbert Rice who was living in Galway at the time. He was a Quaker, American. And the Quakers in Galway used to fund a school in Gaza. And they invited some guy over, and he couldn't come. Of course, it's very hard to get out and get visas and all sorts of things. But out of that, Herbert was to come and meet another person in Dublin. And he said, could you meet him? Because I knew Herbert through other things. And I met him, Dr. Mohammed Al-Tawil. He was set up Palestine Trauma Center. And it ended with a guy from England, Jerry Conway, Renee from the Netherlands, and myself went out and started training people and in PTC, and they did that for many years. And then
went to Gaza, Mary,
went to Gaza twice, 2011 and 2013, which was an amazing journey, in through Egypt, over the desert, through watching over the Suez Canal. You see all these containers, and you kind of go, my God, it's such a different world. And into Gaza, which is talk about people who are resilient. I'm so full of admiration and at the same time full of horror that it's still allowed to be there.
Anyway, so you were in a trauma center in Gaza, teaching, focusing to people
Yes,
with a...
so who were going to, who then began to, we developed a 12 session module, which was delivered to groups. And that was kind of going for many years. Then the woman who was the supervisor there, Radwan, she left. And then but in the meantime, I'd begun to train her as a trainer. So up to then, it was a bit like we taught them so much, or we had a little program, and people delivered it. There wasn't a lot of development or innovation or training of other people. It became, a thing that worked very well, but it didn't go any further in terms of training people to be self-sufficient and to do it with others or spread it. But Kata is now a trainer. About 2 years ago, when I became a coordinator. And then she has a great vision for what she wants to do, which is to spread focusing in Gaza. And so, as you know yourself, you're a trainer, okay, and you train, and then you're kind of going, what will I do now? How will I get a group? Where will I, where there isn't a ready-made audience, So she worked very hard at finding a group to do a pilot with, and then I said, well, we'll help you develop a new course, not just what you did for your training, but a whole program that will help you also then train others. So I asked Margaret Quinn and Tom Larkin to be the mentors with me, because I knew we needed, I've taught a lot of focusing, but I've taught focusing, but not a lot in many ways. I've used it a lot, but I don't know if I have done 10 million courses. So I thought, God, I need help with this. So, Margaret and Tom bring such wonderful skills, like, well, they're both teachers, and Margaret's very, good at kind of like developing curricula and structure and putting things together. And then Tom really brings a lot around dealing with trauma. And, Gada herself was very clear. We need to be really careful, about traumatic memories, keeping people safe, all of that. So that's been great. She's now delivered her first one, kind of like 5 sessions, which we had developed as 15 hours, but actually it took her much longer because it needs to be slower. And last week, we're now beginning to work with her on the next advanced listening. And that'll be kind of like getting to the point of creating partnerships or guiding that, so then the next stage will be hopefully bringing people on. So that takes up a lot of time and work now for me.
Yeah, that's a huge area. And was the focusing with children a part of that work in Gaza or not?
It kind of was a bit. I'm not so sure that took off so much. It was more about the groups that came into the center, or that, which tended to be kind of like, maybe there was a women's group, a men's group. So I'm not so sure that the children focusing. Now it may happen again. PTC are doing. PTC have other mentors now, and they might do other things. I don't know. Yeah.
So that sounds like that's, as you say, taking up a lot of your time and energy now. And what else, Mary, is alive and fresh and...
Well, the other thing is, I'm with Elaine Goggin and Mark Quinn. I'm on the Roundtable team, which is like, which is a free to membership with of Tiffy, in which people have conversations about topics that are of interest, and that's a good bit of work. Finding people, finding topics, organizing it, working with people to make it all go smoothly. There's a lot of admin in it, and there's a lot of, meeting interesting people, and you're kind of going, what do we do now? Or what do we think now? Or, and we'll do it for, we've another year to run and then, continue on. But it's funny how, not to go back to the reading freshly, one of the things that came to me when I reread the book, I said, wouldn't it be good if we read it together? And it's not so suitable for a round table because it's not the format. So I proposed it to Catherine Torpy, director of Tiffy, and so we're now going to have a year-long reading of Jennings' book, Focusing, starting 3rd of October, which will be an hour and a half once a month. People can join every month, and we'll read as fast as the slowest process and just work through the book and see what comes out of that freshly. So then I'm not having any more ideas on forever. I'm just going to go on holidays.
That sounds lovely, and it reminds me that I first learned about a reading group from yourself and Margaret, and so that will be the format for, or the nature of the Reading Freshly, is it? Like a reading
type
group
thing. Yeah, we're going to have two hosts, one reading and one keeping an eye on if people want to ask questions or put up their hands, so that we are living that promise of, if you need to stop. And we're going to also have separately a tech support. And so there's, so people, we haven't done it yet, so ask me after tomorrow. That's the idea, to read, and then you can stop and ask questions. And then there'll be an opportunity in smaller groups to say, what does it mean? What struck me? What about that? What's fresh in that for me? So the reading and that will be together, and you can ask clarification questions. And then there's an opportunity to open it up into, well, isn't that interesting? Or what that means for me, or I never knew, or so we've kind of structured it that way.
That is the magic, isn't it, of reading with others? How it brings something so new and so fresh, and that just arises in the moment when you're reading with others.
Just arises, and you're kind of going, oh yeah, I see that now. Or I never thought of it that way, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Okay. So before we finish, Mary, what else is really alive in you right now regarding focusing, or what are your hopes for the future with focusing? What would you like to see happen?
Yeah, I'd love to see people really look at how focusing is taught. And it goes back to that thing about, is there a way of having it as a discovery of something rather than as something you have to learn, like algebra? I don't think algebra is in you, but I think felt sensing is. Now I think you can cultivate and all that, but I think the level, there's something about, I'm not sure why that isn't looked at, or how is, like, what are methods of teaching nowadays? How do you teach online? I don't think that's kind of looked at very much. That's something I'd love to see. I'm not so sure, like now, I'll be involved in that so much because, I've been doing this a long time. I'm kind of retired. I was down in the Ballymaloe Cookery School. I said, I think I'd really like to spend more time cooking. I do a lot of focusing, and I do enough. There's other things, so it's not something that is the whole of my life. Yeah.
And it sounds like that desire to find that different way of teaching people focusing is linked to your going back to the reading gentle and freshly.
Now that you put it like that, I think if people see it as he envisaged it like that. Now, he did obviously put down 6 steps as a way of learning. So that's also there. You know, that he identified maybe that people do need to kind of like have ways into it. I'm not so sure that was in my mind, the teaching of it, but that's a vague, unspecified thing that I know I won't be involved in. It's something that's for other people. I just like to put it out there though and see what people think about that.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have done so much in bringing focusing to so many people in different areas.
And, you know, I was a bit like, that wasn't ever my intention or vision, or maybe I've always kind of drifted along and saying, that would be interesting to do now. That would be very interesting. Rather than the whole big strategy of how to do it, you know?
And just to finish up, Mary, what would you say focusing has done most of all for you personally?
I would say that it has allowed me to see that what I said originally, or when we in our conversation. It's like life wants to live forward. So it's a bit like, don't be afraid of things that happen or that seem to be difficult, or, you know, and I think I'd love, yeah, so that's what it's done. So the other thing I think about, sorry now if I'm running over, I'd love to see focusing in sort of brought into the public space. Is there anything to say about the world we're in more than the personal world we're all in? I'd love to see that more developed. It must have, because if it's about life forward, we wouldn't have all the wars and the awful things that are, you know, that sense of that we are the environment. If we took that seriously, we wouldn't have a climate change. We wouldn't have a climate problem. But there's something about that I'd love to see as well.
Yeah,
I don't know how to do it, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah, seems a really important vision, doesn't it, to hold?
Yeah, I think so. It's to out of the public, out of the private space into the public space. Not leaving the private behind.
Yeah, it's like there's both, isn't it?
There's
we can't
both.
separate public from private.
Yeah. Do you know? So, or yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Mary. It's been lovely to chat and hear all about your,
just was
your
rabbiting
focusing
on
life.
there. Yeah.
And thanks again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.